Our next guest is sounding the alarm that Silicon Valley and the West have lost their way. Joining us right now is Alex Karp, Palantir CEO and co-founder. His first book is out this morning, The Technological Republic, Hard Power, Soft Belief, and the Future of the West. We want to thank you for joining us.
It's kind of risque.
It's a little risque, you think?
The title, it's hard to know if it's like an off-color movie, hard power, soft. But
I like that. Wow, he goes there early.
It's hard to know. It's hard to know.
I have about a million questions about the book, but before we get there, I just want to ask you a couple things about the news, because interestingly, I would say the book, which you wrote a year ago, in a way, you were predicting where we were be today in terms of some of the big issues.
The interesting thing, basically, what people should, it's not actually the standard book comes in two forms. Either promote yourself, it should be Karp AI, or it's somebody running for president. I'm doing neither. And so the book really is an attempt to say, look, everything you learned at your school and college about how the world works is intellectually incorrect. And here is a way of seeing the world that may not be right, but it's not wrong. And so trying to be right is very hard, but you can definitely know what's wrong. And what you've been taught in college, that you basically should have no beliefs, that the West is inferior, that the intellectual tradition of the West, it leads to self-flagellation and losing on the battlefield, losing intellectually, losing your party, losing your country, losing your border, that your institutions can't work because we're so good. It's actually wrong. And the West was actually never about that. And you can be good, decent, and win, and be intellectually correct. And what was absolutely spot on about what's in the book is we have this technological revolution. It's no longer fake. 3-4 years ago, institutions basically thought I'd rather have a good steak dinner and a bad product, and at least I get the steak dinner because the software product doesn't work. Now we are in a software-defined world, and the nation that leads software is the USA. And so what does that mean for all institutions? What it means is those institutions have to actually live up to their core mandate. So a country has to have a border, the educational institutions have to work, the military actually has to be scary. You actually can have things function in a way where the outputs are much greater than the inputs. And people who ignore this are going to be washed away.
Why'd you write this? Were you mad at the educational system? Did you think that they were teaching the wrong things? What sparked it?
Look, I think the West, as a notion and as a principle upon which it is executed again, is obviously superior. And not acknowledging that, because by not acknowledging it or denying it, you could pretend you were smarter or better than you were, has led to enormous problems in our society. And also, for the sake of humanity, we have been blessed with a resource called talent management and software production that no other country has. So what does that mean for us? What does it mean for the world? How do you manage that ethically? How do you, and how do you prevent what we had? Essentially, we had a pagan religion that has infiltrated our universities, and that pagan religion basically says everything that's good about America, everything that actually works, is ipso facto bad. And by the way, you can't talk about it not working because it's a religion. So it's not even, and it's a new religion. It's not an old great religion, Judaism, Christianity, Islam. It's a new religion, and the tenets are West is bad, nothing can work. If it works, it's bad, and the West is, and that way of thinking has corroded every aspect of our society. Last not least, it leads to a situation where you get a complete corrosion of all institutions and to a legitimacy crisis. So no one actually believes anyone's an expert. I'll just make this last point. In the 50s, if there was this famous professor, Ken Arrow, and if Ken Arrow said you were smart, you got tenure. And why did that happen? It was because people knew Ken Arrow is smart, the institution he represents is the best in the world. There is no one like, honestly, the only thing like that currently in tech is a Palantir degree. If you work for Palantir, everyone knows you're good. And that's basically, none of these, like when we went to school, the schools actually had credibility. The science was actually science.
Okay, so let me just ask you, and then I want to actually get into some of the news, but what would you do to bring it back, and do you think we're on that path now?
Well, I think actually, so one of the things that's not in the book, I think if you read the book, it reads like it was written today. But so I'll just, one of the things that I would, if I were writing the book today, there's a sense that people have that there's a pendulum swing. So if you if you look at institutions that are failing and you talk to the smart people there, universities, UN, Democratic Party, they'll tell you there's going to be a pendulum swing back. But AI is actually breaking the pendulum swung. So what Europe thinks, if you I spent half my life in Germany. You talk to smart Germans, they're like, okay, we're having a bad time. We're going to have a good time. We did this under Schroeder. It'll come back. We don't actually agree with all the stuff that people say. We can't say it publicly. That's what they say. Okay, but what they're not understanding is the technical revolution now is so great, you got to get on the train because that train is leaving and there is not going to be a swing back. So what I'm trying to say to people who are on the pendulum, people who are builders, is we have a responsibility. We have to be dedicated to our nation. What I'm saying to people who may think they can get off the train, university intellectuals, United Nations dedicated to undermining America and anyone who's Jewish or something, you're being left behind. And by the way, I'm happy you're being left behind. But just know, if you get left behind, do not cry that you're not part of the dialogue. And that's actually what's happening. They're crying, all these people are becoming protest parties. It's I grew up protesting in D.C. with my parents, and no one listened. If you want to go back to that, just do not read the book. Pretend this isn't happening.
Alex, how did so many, whoever's hiring at colleges, it was just sort of a mass hysteria to all be on the same page for who gets tenure and what dogma and orthodoxy makes you attractive to college? Because it's everywhere. I don't understand how it happened, and I don't think we ever get it back.
Well, I understand how it happens. It's this country is fundamentally Calvinist. So that's one of the great strengths of this country. And what Calvinism basically says, as opposed to Lutheranism and other, is if you've done something big and important, you're probably a good person. And what you had at universities was an inversion and rejection of that. And so all the intellectual movements are downstream from that. And so and that inversion is very, very charismatic if you want to assume that you are right because you're wrong, basically. And it's a very, very charismatic movement. But I think the area where we bear responsibility, who disagree with it, is we have to stand up and say, but this doesn't work. We have to, one of the things in the book that's unusual is I'm quoting, judge them by the fruits they bear. Okay, you're in favor of this world order. What have you built that works? Show me any institution that you've created, any institution. And I want to see that institution where the inputs are less than the outputs. So and I don't care what it is. It could be an intellectual project. It can be a road. It can be a skyscraper. It can be a weapon system. And what you will find is they'll literally say, I reject that frame. And that's okay. But it's our responsibility to hold them to account. You rejected the frame of something that could work. I'm not saying that everything I'm saying is right. I don't know that. But I am certain that what you're saying does not work, and you will be left behind in history.